organization made up of both men and women, established to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation in government. The League does not support, oppose, or evaluate political candidates or parties. Although our nonpartisanship policy does not permit endorsement of political campaigns, we do, after very careful study, take positions on political issues. The format for today's forum is as follows. Each candidate will receive 1.5 minute time for an opening comment. Next, the candidates will respond to questions from our panelists. These panelists have submitted their questions to the League of Women Voters who have reviewed them. Each candidate will have a 1 minute time period to answer each question, and finally, they will each have a 1 minute closing statement. In the interest of time and decorum, I will ask the audience here in the chambers to please hold all applause until the end of this forum. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the candidates who are running for Sacramento County Sheriff. To my direct right, Scott Jones, welcome.
Thank you.
And to my left, Jim Cooper.
Thank you.
Welcome. And thank you for agreeing to participate in today's forum. I would also like to welcome our panelists asking the questions today. From the League of Women Voters of Sacramento County, Lola Acosta, and Pia Lopez from the Sacramento Bee. Thank you for joining us today and offering your expertise. It is now time to start our opening statements. The candidates have drawn straws prior to the start of today's forum. So we will start with Scott Jones.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, those of you that are here. Thanks to the League for putting on another great event. Special thanks to my parents who decided to join me this evening. I'm Captain Scott Jones, a 21-year veteran of the Sheriff's Department. I currently have several assignments. I'm the Department Legal Advisor, a position I've held for the better part of the last 10 years. I'm Sheriff McGinnis's Chief of Staff, and I'm Commander of the Investigations Division. And during my time with the Sheriff's Department, I've held many positions through various ranks. I've been a deputy in corrections. I've been a deputy assigned in a patrol car, patrolling the streets of Sacramento County. I've worked my way through the ranks of sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and held various key leadership roles in the department, such as internal affairs commander, watch commander, assistant to the chief, assistant to the sheriff, main jail commander, and again, legal advisor for 2 administrations and others. During the debate tonight, I'd like you to pay particular attention. One of us is going to be talking a lot about failures of the past and failures of the last administration that he perceives, as well that relates to a sheriff that clearly is not on the ballot for November. I'm going to be focusing all my effort and energy on the future, how to run this organization, move it forward through these historic times by giving you specific examples of what I'm going to do and specific measures of how I'm going to do it. I hope I get to share a lot of that vision with you today, and I appreciate all of your being here. Thank you.
Thank you. And your opening statement, Jim Cooper.
Thank you, Tricia, and thank you to the League of Women Voters. Always great to be here. And folks in the audience and at home, I'm glad you're watching. I'm glad you're involved. We're at critical times right now. I've been with the Sheriff's Department for 26 years now. And with the tough economic times, it's time for a change. We can't have business as usual, and that's the issue, the establishment. We have to change things. And Scott brought up a good point. You got to know where you've been in the past to know where you're going to go in the future. And that's really the critical thing. I've been with the department for 26 years now. I'm the senior captain. I've had every assignment a captain can have in the department. I've commanded 2 patrol divisions, the academy, the main jail, work release, payroll and personnel, and now I'm the commander of the Sacramento Valley High-Tech Crimes Task Force. We have 2 missions. One is ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children. We do all the child pornography for Northern California. I'm the commander of a 51 agency group and state, federal, and local agencies, and we go after folks that download and distribute child pornography. And we also do identity theft along with cell phone forensics and computer forensics. Also, I've been a council member down in Elk Grove since 2000. I'm in my 3rd term, so I've been a 10-year councilman. I've been mayor twice. Served on a significant number of boards and commissions for our region. And probably what I'm most proud of for the past 15 years, I've been very active in my community and served on the boards of a lot of nonprofits that we know Big Brothers Big Sisters, the Boys and Girls Club, Children's Receiving Home, the Elk Grove Teen Center, When Youth Services. And my primary issue is helping kids out.
Thank you. We now move to the question and answer portion of this forum. Lola, will you please direct the first question first to Scott Jones?
Mr. Jones, both of you and Mr. Cooper come from within the current Sheriff's Department. What do you see as the chief strengths and weaknesses of the department, and how would you build on the strengths and remedy the weaknesses?
That's a great question. And clearly the strength, as I was a legal advisor for two administrations, I got to see an insider's view of two very different administrations with two very different management styles. The things that Sheriff McGinnis brought, it brought the dawn of a new era in the Sheriff's Department in terms of the transparency, the accountability of the employees, and the responsiveness to the agency. Although we've endured some historically terrible times financially with the layoff of officers last year, we got awarded this year the largest grant funding for 50 officers, the largest award that was awarded anywhere in the country for the last 2 years. So we'll be able to build on that for patrol services. Clearly the weakness right now is in proactive policing and field services and keeping the communities safe, which we've been less able to do.
Thank you. And Jim?
You know, Scott brought up a good point. We did get the largest award in the nation. That's great. We're going to get 50 officers back. The issue is we laid off more than anybody in the nation, and that's a critical issue. We've got to change the way we do business, and everyone's tightened their belt for the economy, but I'll tell you, in 08-09, we were overspent by $3.8 million. For 09-010, by another $3 million, and we're estimated to be overspent by $5 million this year. The rest of the county agencies wonder why the Sheriff's Department always overspends its budget. So probably come next July, we're going to be close to $12 million overspent, and that's the big issue. That's why we have to change the way we do business and not just do business as usual. It's important because the folks out there at home, you're tightening their belt. We haven't done that yet, and there are ways we can do that and generate revenue. That's really the number one key. We've lost 45% of our patrol officers. And in today's paper, there's an article about 911 response time being up significantly. Elk Grove, Rancho Cordova, City of Sacramento, they have a great 911 response time. Ours is bad. We've got to get back to boots on the ground. Officers are going to answer those calls for service.
Thank you. Pia, will you please direct the next question first to Jim Cooper?
Statewide violent crime rates have dropped to their lowest levels since the 1970s, and property crime rates also have dropped precipitously. In Sacramento County, the picture is a little bit more mixed. We saw upward ticks in both categories from 2002 to 2006, and they dropped after that, but they're still higher than we would want them. What do you attribute the differences in Sacramento to the rest of the state to? And what can we do to keep a decline in crime rates in both categories going?
That's a great question. And part of it is we lost our gang unit. The gang unit was very proactive and they went out there and went after bad guys every day. They don't do that anymore. Street narcotics team, they're out there buying undercover from drug dealers every day. That unit's gone. I spent 9 years of my career undercover in narcotics, in the narcotic gang unit. Bought drugs, sold drugs, went to LA and San Francisco on narcotic deals and combated dealers that were bringing drugs here to Sacramento. Those units are gone, and that's part of the issue. So gang members and drug dealers are pretty much left to run free out there. And we don't have any more POP officers. So the enforcement we had 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago is gone. So we've got to get back to that, the basics. And this is a start, bringing those patrol officers back. They're going to work patrol. We've got to increase our gang unit. For the last 21 years, I've been the commander of the State Fair Police Gang Unit dealing with gang issues. So that's my area of expertise as a detective in that unit, as a sergeant, and as a commander. So we've got to get back to basics and putting officers in the street that work those specific neighborhood issues. Those are really quality of life issues.
Thank you. And Scott?
Well, gangs are certainly one part of it, but the overarching theme here is proactive policing. It's entirely predictable what's going to happen to the crime rates in Sacramento County if we diminish our level of public safety and our ability to protect folks, ability to provide proactive policing services, not only in gangs, but simple things like car burglaries. We don't respond to your home anymore for those, and we don't investigate them either. So there's this growing cadre of folks that aren't being held accountable to the criminal justice system, and if you don't negatively reinforce that aberrant behavior is going to continue. So it's not just a gang issue, it's partially a gang issue, but we need to get back to a proactive level of policing to address the quality of life issues so they don't become crime issues down the road.
Thank you. Lola, Would you please direct the next question first to Scott Jones?
Mr. Jones, what kind of budget situation over the next 4 years should a prudent county sheriff plan for?
Well, all of my platform over the last 13 months of campaigning has been for no additional revenue. I don't think I would never advocate for a tax increase. What we need to do is look in the mirror and find out what we can do more efficiently, more cost effectively. That starts with regionalization of services. We're all doing the same thing in Sacramento County, each of us agencies. There's no trade secrets. We need to regionalize services with our regional public safety partners. That's why I went out and got the endorsements of all the municipal police chiefs in Sacramento County: Galt, Ileton, Sacramento, Citrus Heights, Folsom, Rancho Cordova, West Sacramento. All of those police chiefs have endorsed my candidacy because not only do they share that vision of regionalized services so we can free up resources and redeploy them where we need them elsewhere. That's how we move forward with no additional revenue. But there's many ways. But all of my platform and vision for moving the department forward starts with a premise that there's no more money coming for the near term, but there's still many things that we can do to move forward.
Thank you. And Jim?
It's tough to move forward, and I said earlier, that budget deficit still follows us, 3.8 from 08-09, 3 million from last year, and another 5 million this year. And that's the principal thing. We have to change it. We've got to generate revenue. We had revenue-generating units, work release division, inmates picking up trash, and on home detention, which is ankle bracelet monitoring. That brought in $6 million a year. I commanded that division. We cut them back. So there's a lot of ways that we can save money internally because the pot's not going to get any bigger. We're going to suffer still, our range. We spend about $1 million a year on ammunition. We can change that and buy from local vendors and cut our costs significantly. And those are just some of the things that we need to do and address these issues. And with the overtime right now, we're spending $15,000 a day at the jail in overtime between the two jails. That's about $100,000 a week, $500,000 a month. And that's part of the reason we're going to be $5.5 million over our budget this year. We've got to change that and reprioritize and get some of those folks out of positions where we can fill non-sworn and sworn positions and better utilize those folks on the street in patrol.
Thank you. Pia, will you please direct the next question first to Jim Cooper?
I'd actually like to follow up on the last question I asked, since 1 minute really isn't enough to get into much detail. Mr. Cooper, you talked about the loss of the gang unit as contributing to some of the issues with our crime rates. And Mr. Jones, you talked about trying to get more proactive policing. Can both of you give us a little bit more detail about what you would do in either with the gang unit on Mr. Cooper's side and what you mean exactly by proactive policing given our budget situation?
Sure. Number one, I would put the gang unit back on the street and not have them be reactive. Go out there and be proactive. And one of the reasons is you develop information out there by working out there and suppressing gang activity. Same thing with narcotics. These folks know no borders. They're all over. We've got to do that. Number two, down in Elk Grove, we're not a big city. We just created a police athletic league for our kids, something for the kids to go and do. That's very important to have an outlet for those kids. And a charter school within the jail. Number one, a lot of those folks over there across the street from us, they're about 2,500 inmates. Most of them read and write at a 3rd or 4th grade level. They're in custody. You know what? Let's go ahead and give them an education, help them out. The state has a significant number of programs that hire ex-felons, ex-cons, and the one thing usually missing is the lack of a GED or college education. So I propose to have those inmates go through it. Contra Costa County has a great charter program that's nationally renowned. We can do that right now. There's no sense in reinventing the wheel. And I think in combination with those things, it makes a big difference. But the first thing is getting your narcotic and gang unit back on the streets.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Well, just speaking specifically to the gang unit and the gang issue, I disagree a little bit with my opponent. I do not think you're going to solve the gang problem in Sacramento County by throwing more resources at it, having more enforcement action. You're only going to solve the gang problem in Sacramento County by changing behavior. By simple suppression and enforcement, you're not going to do that. It has to be prevention, intervention, and then suppression. They have to change behavior to solve the gang problem. Simply throwing more resources aren't going to help in the enforcement end of things. But in terms of responding to your specific question about what do I mean by proactive enforcement, it's very simple. We got rid of all of our problem-oriented police officers, our quality of life officers. Probably many of us have never had to call 911 for a life-threatening critical emergency, but we're all affected by the house that's become a gang hangout or a homeless shelter or graffiti. Those are the quality of life issues that the POP officers who did not respond to calls for service but addressed those quality of life issues along with court enforcement and fire and other agencies. That's the proactive force, the POP officers that we need to get back as we incrementally are able to rebuild our force, our field strength.
Thank you. Lola, would you please direct the next question first to Mr. Jones?
It's a bit of a follow-up on the prior two questions, continuing that thread if we may. During this candidate forum and earlier forums in the primary season, the public learned of operational issues where improvements could bring benefit in the allocation of limited resources. What improvements would you prioritize for initial change in general, and why did you choose these?
Well, my approach would be, I was first, right? Okay, my approach would be twofold. Number one is something we can do immediately is start regionalization of services. Like I said, the CSI, gang units, SWAT teams, we're all doing the same thing. Insofar as we can combine resources and pull back resources and administrative costs, duplicative overhead, and reallocate those things elsewhere where we need them, that's something we can do immediately. Over the long term, what we need is to build a better relationship with the public and engage them in the fight against crime, change the paradigm of ownership from us being the sole proprietor of public safety to communities, however defined, however you can define it, geographic, ethnic, religious, however you can define communities, taking ownership of their own public safety in collaboration with the Sheriff's Department. That's the only way we're going to be effective at controlling crime with our resources as we have them now or in the near future.
Thank you. And Mr. Cooper?
Number one, we need to reflect our community, and we don't. Number two, we talk about regionalism. That's a great idea. Over at McClellan Air Force Base, our academy was there with SAC PD, City Fire, and Metro Fire. We just pulled out within the last 3 months. Mayfair, we had an emergency vehicle operations course. As an attorney, our number one liability we have are officers getting in accidents because they drive so many hours on the streets every day. We just pulled out of that at Mayfair Air Force Base. So here you have two good programs, you're involved in regionalization, and it pulls out. Scott is the ultimate insider, the sheriff's chief of staff, legal advisor, and he has a great amount of input. So we talk about regionalism, yet we don't do that. It makes no sense. We've got to do that. That makes the most sense in tackling some of those units. The gang unit, I've been on regional task forces. They work. The narcotic unit, I've been on those. We had those. I had a task force now. So we've got to do more and get involved. And there's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of grant money. I'm about 70 or 80% grant funded through federal funding and state funding where I am right now. We would have lost 4 deputies we put in and got grant money, and they still have their jobs.
Thank you. It sounds like we needed 2 or 3 minute answers on those. Okay, Pia, will you please direct the next question first to Jim Cooper?
Sure. From city and school candidates, we've been hearing a lot about school truancy issues and also, in some communities, loss of after-school programs. And both of you have talked about sort of the balance between prevention and enforcement. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what role, given your budgetary constraints, the Sheriff's Department can play in after-school programs and in preventing truancy.
Elk Grove PD is 4 years old. Sheriff's Department's 166 years old. Elk Grove has started a PAL. The Sheriff's Department can do that. We need to do that. And I have a history. I've been involved in children's charities for 15 years now by choice. Adults, they made their decisions. Kids need to have the chance to grow up and lead a good life. So I've always focused on that. There's a lot more we can do. A lot of community-based organizations out there that want to partner with the Sheriff's Department. We can do a great job in partnering with them and bringing programs here. It's been done. Elk Grove's done it. I've sat in the teen center, and for a number of years, the city made them a line item budget. We gave them $100,000 a year to help our teens in Elk Grove, a safe place to go and get a good education. So it helped out. The Sheriff's Department can do much more. Unfortunately, we haven't, and that's for the past 166 years. Citrus Heights and Rancho Cordova, they're starting their own teen centers. So it's ironic, the oldest agency here in the city doesn't have any programs, any good programs.
Thank you. And Scott?
Well, I'd love to be able to sit here and tell you we're going to develop a PAL and other programs for after school, but the reality is simply not true. There are plenty of programs out in the community, and we simply need to show up. Part of this intervention and prevention aspect that I'm talking about is the first time we come into a young person's lives cannot be when we show up to take their brother or their father to jail. They have to have positive experiences with us, or what I like to call we have to make incremental deposits in our Goodwill bank account, because sometimes we're going to make substantial withdrawals and there has to be funds in there. there. The only way we're going to get a representative department, representative of our community, and build trust within the community is to show up in these young people's lives. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just simply have to show up and be a resource for the Boys and Girls Clubs, for the other outfits and organizations that are already out there. And I plan to do that, not only with my managers, but my officers, just have them show up so they have perhaps positive interactions, but at least, the very least, neutral interactions with our officers to start building that trust.
Thank you. Lola, we'll move to the next question. Please direct it first to Mr. Jones.
Mr. Jones, how would you assess the staffing ratio for Sacramento County's Sheriff's Department? How has staffing changed since cities such as Citrus Heights have incorporated and formed their own police departments?
Staffing has always been inadequate in the county of Sacramento, and while, like I said, we did get the highest award in the country for the COPS grant and for 50 additional positions, that by no means even brings us up to a national standard of 1 officer per 1,000 residents. At times, we are down to 0.3 to 0.5 officers per 1,000 residents in the unincorporated area, which is wholly inadequate. So even with this 50 officer augmentation, we are not going to be even to a national standard. The cities all around us have a better ratio, and that's one of the reasons that they incorporate to make their own cities, frankly. Historically, when the cities have incorporated, we've been able to absorb those officers back, which had a short-term raise in our ratios, but over the long term, it's always settled into the 0.5 to 0.75 range.
Thank you. And Jim Cooper.
Yeah, and 2 other cities in California got $7 million. We got 22. San Jose PD, Kern County SO. They laid off no patrol officers. So it still goes back to that reason we lost that money. It's important that we change the way we do business and get the officers out there. And here's a big issue. Think about this. No matter where you live, we all pay the same amount of taxes. The folks in Elk Grove do, Citrus Heights, Rancho Cordova, City of Sacramento. But yet, if you're a citizen in the county, your level of service, your 911 response time is less. We've laid off 45% of our patrol officers, detectives. It's not right. And there are ways to do that. There are ways to combat that. Yeah, money is a big issue, but we can do more with less. And there's still some cuts we can make, some very hard choices that we need to do in the Sheriff's Department. And it comes back to the same issue for the last 4 years. We've got to change it. We're still digging ourselves out of that hole. It's like that adage, when are you going to stop digging? $12 million in debt for next year. That's before you even start your 11-12 budget.
Thank you. And I think we're down to 1, possibly 2 questions, just to give you a little hint to that, Pia.
Well, if we have only 1 question left, I'm going to exercise prerogative and say, what question would you ask your opponent in this?
And Jim Cooper, please go first.
And if we have time for another one, I have another one.
That's a very good question. I think it's about experience. It's really about experience, not sitting behind a desk. Experience in dealing with that. It's important.
Well, ask him. Pose a question to him.
As a sheriff, it's important to know and to have been there. Some of the things we're asking our deputies to do. Right now, they can't get a day off. They call in sick to get a day off. So how would you improve it?
Am I answering his question? Will I still get to answer a question?
Yes,
Ask a question? Well, that's not true that they're not getting time off. That is the perception. But in our entire North Patrol Division, the average is 105 hours for the first 8 months of the year, which is a pretty decent amount of time off. So the experience question, I think my qualifications stand on their own. I've worked in all the assignments. I've held key leadership roles. I've been John McGinnis's chief of staff. I've seen what a sheriff does, and I've learned from mistakes of 2 sheriffs, and I've gained strength from the strength of 2 sheriffs.
Okay. And now it's your turn to ask Mr. Cooper a question.
I'll echo that. Is a good question, one that I haven't been asked in the last 13 months. I guess my question would be, and I've heard you talk before about the relationships and being able to start on day 1 because you have the relationships. I guess, how can you demonstrate the relationships that you've been able to have, since I have the support of every majority city council and have as much support on your own city council as you have. How do you describe your ability to forge and maintain relationships?
That's a good question. On my city council, there are 5 of us, so I have the support of 3, including myself. But I think what's critical is I've been a councilman for 10 years. I sat on SAGCOG for 8 years. Bought back $120 million in federal funding to build 2 interchanges down in Elk Grove. I worked with Doris Matsui back in Washington, Dan Lundgren, folks from Boxer's office and Feinstein's office. You don't have that. You've never been back to Washington and dealt with those people to bring back money here. On the local level, I have relationships with all the city councils, and I've dealt with them and have a great working relationship. I think part of the reason you got the support, I know, of the local chiefs was because of Sheriff McGinnis asking those folks to endorse you and support you. But it comes down to experience day one. Who's going to go in there? The folks over at our state capitol, I've got the support of our legislative leaders. So experience, experience, experience. It truly goes back to that. And in my 26 years in the sheriff's department, and I'll turn it back around, you're his chief of staff, his legal advisor. There have been mistakes. You can't distance yourself from that. You've been an intricate insider. And for you to say, hey, I wasn't involved in that, it wasn't my choice, I don't buy that.
Thank you. I think we'll end the question and answer period on that high note of asking each other questions, and we'll move to closing statements. Scott Jones, you are first.
Thank you. Thanks again for this forum. In addition to the endorsements of the Sheriff McGinnis and the municipal police chiefs, I also have the majority or unanimous support of the city councils of Citrus Heights, Folsom, Rancho Cordova, Galt. I have more support on the County Board of Supervisors than does my opponent, and if he were to recuse himself from his own vote, which I would expect him to, I would have the same amount of support on his own city council as Mr. Cooper does. I also have the support of the Chambers of Commerce of Elk Grove, Citrus Heights, and Folsom, and every media outlet that's weighed in on this race has endorsed my candidacy, from the Bee, who reaffirmed their endorsement of me this morning by saying I was the clear choice to be sheriff, to the Sacramento News and Review. I have the endorsement of the California Peace Officers Association, the California Police Chiefs Association, the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. And I won the primary decisively, and I'd be honored and humbled to have your support on November 2nd to be your sheriff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Jim Cooper?
Number one, the County Board of Supervisors. I have Donna Tolley, I have Roger Dickinson. I have Roger Dickinson, I have Jimmy E. Donna Tolley has not endorsed anybody. So I'm trying to figure out how you have a majority of the
I
Board of
apologize.
Supervisors.
I did not know you had Roger.
Yeah, I do. So that's funny. Anyways, what it really consists of is I have the rank and file, the folks that are out there responding to your 911 calls to answer those calls. Deputy Sheriff's Association, our peers, our fellow captains and lieutenants endorse me. Probation officers endorse me. Elk Grove Police Officers Association, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce. I have every SAC city council member except Robbie Waters, who pulled his endorsement of Scott. So basically the entire Sacramento City Council, and those folks are our biggest partner in the region. Mayor Kevin Johnson, I have his endorsement. I've got endorsements from our legislative leaders as well as council members around the region. And that's really the important thing. It comes back to experience. Day one, I've done this for 26 years as a captain, and my time is up.
Well, I thank both of you for joining us today. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Sacramento County and the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission, I do want to thank the candidates and our panelists for participating in today's forum. I would also like to thank the many volunteers who made this forum possible. This forum has been designed to impart information to you, the voter, in accordance with our belief that a democratic government depends upon the informed and active participation of its citizens. We hope that the insights you've gained from today's forum will aid you in making your decision. For voter information and rebroadcast times, please visit our Smart Voter website at www.smartvoter.org or the League of Women Voters of Sacramento County at our website at www.lwvsacramento.org. The League of Women Voters is where hands-on work to safeguard democracy truly leads to civic improvement. Please remember to cast your vote on November 2nd and help make this democracy work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.